Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are plunging into the huge literary and cultural world of Zulfu Li.
And it really is a massive world.
Yeah.
Vaneli isn't just a novelist, he's a defining cultural force.
Right.
His works, which he says are fostered by real life, have set records in Turkey and beyond. So our mission today is to really get into his technique. How does he achieve what critics call a perfect harmony between form and content?
All while tackling these huge, difficult problems. Ethnic identity, historical trauma.
Exactly, and the ideals of tolerance and enlightenment.
You know, when you look at his body of work, polymath just doesn't seem like a strong enough word.
Not at all.
I mean, we're talking about an artist with over 300 compositions, 30 film scores. He directed features like Yer Demir Gök Bakırer and Sis. And on top of all that, 17 books. He's a true cultural transmitter.
And that output,
Yeah.
it really speaks to this deep, restless curiosity that was shaped by a very specific political moment.
The 68 generation.
The 68 generation, absolutely. That global push for freedom, for equality, anti-imperialism. But what's so interesting is how his early life was this blend of different influences.
Like what?
Well, he got a modern education, but then during summer breaks, he'd take Quran courses. And at the same time, he was learning the traditional saz.
So he was absorbing Anatolian culture from all these different, sometimes conflicting angles.
Precisely. That blend of modern and traditional, the political and the spiritual. That's totally key to understanding his perspective. His whole literary identity was really forged in a crucible.
Because of the political situation in the 70s.
Yeah, exactly. He was publishing socialist-leaning material, and that led to arrests. And that all basically led to him being forced into exile. He was in Germany, Sweden, France.
And that international perspective, those decades abroad, must be foundational to his work.
It is. It ensures his viewpoint is never just local. You can feel those multiple cultural viewpoints woven into every single one of his novels.
Okay, so let's unpack his technique. Because Livanelli's storytelling is, well, it's not straightforward. If you're expecting a neat chronological plot, you'll be surprised.
Oh, you will be. He's fundamentally a modernist, but what's so interesting is how he pulls in these really complex postmodern techniques. He just avoids standard timelines.
In favor of what?
In favor of structures that go deep into the character's inner worlds. He uses tools like stream of consciousness, a lot of internal monologues.
And the sources kept coming back to Gary Denou's flashbacks as being absolutely critical.
Precisely. That's the main tool. Gary Denous lets him constantly connect to the past, the present, and even the future. It creates this dense psychological portrait of a person set against a really fragmented historical backdrop.
So the timeline is fragmented to reflect the character's memory.
That's it. It reflects their fragmented reality.
Is the goal just documenting history then, or is he using that fragmentation to say something bigger about memory and our responsibility to the past?
It's absolutely the latter.
Yeah.
And this leads to a really critical stylistic choice he makes. When he deals with these huge historical events, he often uses history as a kind of decor, a backdrop. He doesn't stick to a strict factual narrative.
He calls it novel freedom, right? Roman özgürlüğü.
That's the phrase. He blends reality and fiction, not to make a documentary, but to get at a psychological and emotional depth that, pure history just can't always deliver.
That psychological approach seems essential. If he's fragmenting time and taking liberties with historical facts, how does he use place to keep the characters grounded?
That's a great question. The setting is never passive. It always reflects the character's internal state.
For example?
Well, you see closed spaces triggering fear or feelings of being trapped. Conversely, wide open environments, like the sea in his novel Mutluluk, bring this chance for self-realization, for freedom.
So the inner world and the outer world are always in dialogue.
Perpetually, yes.
Yeah. This focus on internal reality seems to be his way of tackling these huge fragmented histories, which brings us perfectly to the core of Serenade. And this is where we get into this concept of the ring parable.
Yes, and this is just a brilliant moment of literary adaptation. The original reference is to a play from the 18th century Enlightenment, Lessing's Nathan the Wise.
And that play used the ring parable to argue for, what, religious tolerance?
Exactly. For the equality and harmonious coexistence of the three Abrahamic religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. It was a response to the fierce religious conflicts of his time.
So it's an 18th century argument for universal humanism, and Livaneli takes that and updates it for the 21st century for issues of nationalism and identity.
Precisely. In Serenade, the character who sets this all up is Professor Maximilian Wagner. He's an 87-year-old German-American law professor. And he argues that the world's real conflict isn't a clash of civilizations,
Hold up.
a war to ignorance and a war to prejudice. He's setting the stage for a modern parable of tolerance.
And the emotional heart of this novel is the Struma tragedy. We follow Maya Duran, who works in PR at Istanbul University, and she's assigned to meet Max Wagner, who it turns out is being secretly tracked by multiple intelligence agencies.
And that's all because of Max's history, which leads directly to the Struma. Max, an Aryan German professor, had fallen in love with a Jewish girl, Nadia. She was on the Struma, a ship with around 700 Jewish refugees fleeing Romania. The Turkish government held the ship for 2.5 months, and then tragically it was sunk near Shil in 1942.
And Max returns 60 years later to play a serenade for her at the site where she died. It's an incredibly powerful moment. But the story's real turn happens when Maya starts looking into Max's past and then, shockingly, into her own.
Yes. Maya becomes Livaneli's modern figure, caught between all these competing histories. She uncovers her own family's deep, hidden identities, and it just shatters this idea she had of a simple, single Turkish heritage.
Her identity is a palimpsest of historical trauma.
Exactly. Her maternal grandmother was a Krim Tatar, connected to the horrific Mavialay events where thousands were deported and killed by Stalin's regime.
Wow.
And then her paternal grandmother was Armenian, a survivor of the 1915 deportations. Both of these women had to change their names just to survive and assimilate in Turkey.
That's an incredible revelation. So Livaneli is taking Lessing's argument about religious tolerance and applying it to ethnic equality, right? He's showing that Turkish identity is woven from these diverse, often persecuted roots.
The sources really confirm this. They suggest he's building not one but two modern rain parables in the novel. The first is the ethnic one, Maya's background. The second is a religious parable centered on Istanbul itself.
How so?
During World War II, Istanbul became this temporary safe haven where different religious foundations, Jewish, Christian, Muslim, managed this fragile coexistence. For a brief moment, it fulfilled Lessing's ideal.
But Livaneli knows that this kind of tolerance isn't universally accepted. We see that resistance in Maya's brother, Nekdet.
Yes, Nekdet, the military officer. He really embodies that strong, unapologetic, nationalist viewpoint.
He dismisses this historical questioning as dangerous.
Completely. He says, I am Turk, and my duty is to defend my homeland. He thinks these intellectuals are just using these stories to undermine the nation, and that dynamic perfectly frames the tension Livaneli is exploring.
The conflict between political necessity and historical truth.
Exactly.
And you see this again and again in his work, this idea that big political events leave these deep personal scars that never really heal. How does this play out in his other books, like Bir Adam Birulum?
Okay, so that novel is about Sami Baron, a political refugee in Sweden, and he's completely consumed by the memory of his fiancée Felice, who was killed during a cover-up after the 1960s coup.
So it's a revenge plot.
It starts as one. He's seeking revenge against the former minister he holds responsible.
But Livaneli rarely gives you an easy answer. So what's the dilemma Sami faces when he finally finds him?
It's profound. I mean, it's so human. He tracks the minister down to this remote clinic. He's ready to kill him. But he gets there and finds just an old, frail man. And they are the only two people in the entire clinic who speak Turkish.
Oh.
And despite all this hatred he's carried for years, that shared bond of nationality and language, the only connection they have left in exile, it just overrides the political hate.
So he can't do
He
it.
can't. He ends up saving the old man from a suicide attempt. It's this incredible twist.
That's a powerful statement about human connection, that it can run deeper than ideology. Let's move to Mutluluk, or happiness. That one also features characters who are running from different kinds of social sickness.
Mutluluk follows 3 different paths. You have Miriam, who's fleeing a brutal honor killing after being raped. Then there's Simal, a soldier who is deeply traumatized by his time fighting the PKK.
And the third is Irfan Kurudal, a Harvard professor. He's running away from the lumpen, wealthy, but false elite society of Istanbul. His critique seems really central to what Livaneli is saying.
It is. He calls it a nihilist period in Turkey, a time when all referent points are lost. He sees everyone as fundamentally unhappy, just desperately grabbing at branches like religion or nationalism to keep from being swept away.
And he's also really critical of the cultural poverty of this new elite, isn't he?
Oh, fiercely. He goes after the rise of arabesque music culture, calling it a false cry of the oppressed that embodies a lifestyle of slipperiness, deception, and hypocrisy.
It's a critique that goes beyond class. It's about a moral and cultural vacuum.
Exactly. A vacuum created when superficial wealth replaces genuine values.
What's so interesting is that Maryam, fleeing physical violence, and Irfan, fleeing this cultural violence, they're both on the same quest, really. They're trying to find themselves outside of a corrupt system.
And that brings us to another strong theme across his work. These incredibly resilient female characters. Maya Duran, Maryam, Leyla Hanım, and Ledlan Nevi, they all refuse the passive roles society gives them. They fight, they question, they seek freedom.
Leyla Hanım, tell us about her.
So Leyla Nevi uses architecture as its central metaphor. The Bosnalılar Yalusa, the mansion, it symbolizes the loss of old Istanbul values, refinement, culture. And the well-educated Leyla Hanım is illegally evicted by the new owners, who are vulgar and status-obsessed.
Right, Ömer Tövheroglu and his wife Nekla. And the sources point to this tiny detail about Nekla mispronouncing decoración as decoración. Why is that little error so significant?
Because that one small word highlights the very cultural poverty Irfan Kurudal was talking about. They have the money to buy the mansion, but they don't have the history, the education, the respect for its past. It's a corruption of history by a superficial elite. The house loses its anchor, just like society is at risk of losing its own.
So to pull it all together, the key takeaway from our deep dive seems to be this. Livaneli's novels are so much more than just stories. They're these complex intellectual projects using fragmented narratives and personal histories to force a kind of self-reflection on Turkey's multi-ethnic, post-trauma reality.
Absolutely. The analysis really holds up. He successfully builds not just one, but two ring parables in Serenade. One for ethnic harmony, the other for religious coexistence. The message that runs through all his work is that humanism has to come before racism, before nationalism, before any prejudice.
And that journey often starts with a personal retreat.
It does. Characters like Irfan Kurudal find their way by embracing what he calls the happiness of defeat and surrender. Irfan decides to stop living by society's rules, to stop asking these painful questions. Am I Turkish? Am I rich? Am I a philosopher? And to just live according to his own essence.
Which leaves a fundamental question for you, the listener.
Exactly. The question Livaneli asks of you is this. In a world that's defined by conflicting narratives, by cultural fragmentation, by this incredibly complex history, what does it mean for you to define your own path and to fully realize your veru saldoku, your true existential texture?